Hour. Oh, here we go. Now it's official. We can get underway. We're recording. So again, welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here. This is the seventh and final episode in this season's series of the Education Policy Colloquium. And it's sponsored by the Program of Education Policy and Governance here at Kennedy School. My name is Jim Kaiser. I'm an academic visitor here, and it's my privilege to host this session and this series along with Paul Peterson and Marty West. Paul is here. He just vanished, but he'll be back. Today's session features Massachusetts new Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education, Pedro Martinez, sitting right here at the table, who will be talking with us about the state of K-12 education in the Commonwealth. A small topic. July 1st of this year, Pedro became the 25th Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Can anybody name the 25 commissioners? No? I can't. I'm actually, I want to know who did the research to come up with the number, but I believe it's true. Born in Mexico, Mr. Martinez moved to Chicago with his family at a young age. And as the oldest of 12 children, he was the first in his family to graduate from high school and college. Before coming to Massachusetts just over 4 months ago, Pedro served as the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools from 2021 to 2025. Where I'm told he had a calm and uneventful tenure. As things always go in Chicago, very smooth. Yeah, no problems at all. Before heading up CPS, he was superintendent of San Antonio Independent School District, which was the fastest improving large district in the state of Texas during his tenure. And he also served as administrator in Nevada. So he's had broad experience across multiple locations. Massachusetts obviously being the pinnacle of his career in terms of places he's landed. And I'm sure and hopefully he'll be here for a long time. Mr. Martinez holds a master's degree from DePaul University in Chicago and a bachelor's from the University of Illinois. He's the first Latino to serve as DESE Commissioner. So among those 25, you were the first. After Pedro's remarks, we'll have plenty of time for question and answers and discussion back and forth. And although we'll certainly give priority to folks in the room, if there are folks who are watching online or on Zoom, we'll try to bring you into the conversation. So if you have a question or a comment, please sort of enter it in the chat. We'll try to get to that in due time. And obviously, we are broadcasting over Zoom. It is being recorded. It will be posted on the PEPG website, so people can watch asynchronously later on. But that does mean that we're all on the record here. So, Commissioner, I know whenever you speak, you probably feel like you're on the record. So today is especially true. And with that, it's my honor and privilege to turn it over to Pedro Martinez. You can sit here, stand there, whatever you want.
I know we have some slides. So,
oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, so there you go. Maybe I'll stand here so you can see the slides. So again, everyone, good afternoon. Truly my honor to be here at the Kennedy School. So what I want to do today is I'll show you a little bit of data. I'm going to give you a little bit of context of what's happening in the Commonwealth. And then within that, I'll also kind of mix in a little bit of my own, my own personal experience of seeing this work. So let me start with, what you see here is, so just again, the agenda. So let me start with some data. So with the last column, what that is, everybody, is that's actually how far away we are from pre-pandemic levels. You can see our 2024 data, and then you can see our 2025 recent results. So we announced these results at the end of September. So let me give you one piece of context. So those of us who have I've been in education for more than 22 years, always leading from the district side. So I was chief academic officer in Southern Nevada with about 300,000 children, superintendent in Reno, Northern Nevada, 65,000 children, San Antonio with just under 50,000 children, and then Chicago with 325,000 children. So always been on the district side, always in leadership roles, more than half of it as a superintendent. And so it's interesting because coming to our Commonwealth, I joke that, the smallest district I've ever led was actually like the size of GPS football. So I know large systems, and in many ways, the things that I'm seeing and the challenges in our Commonwealth, it reminds me a lot of just the challenges of large systems in general. So I want to just put that context. And so, when we look at where we're at, so first of all, anybody who's not from Massachusetts, we know that the reason Massachusetts became #1 to academics was because of the standards. So Massachusetts, early on from the 90s, said we're going to set really high standards, and then develop the assessment that you've always known it as the gold standard of measure those standards. So it's asking the question, are children able to meet these standards, right? And of course, there's different grade levels. We start in third grade, we go all the way to eighth. We actually also have it in 10th grade. I'm not, I'll spend a little bit of time there, but in that sense, we know that one of the things we have research on is that when students are meeting our standards, whether they're meeting them from grade 3 or in grade 8 or in 10th grade, we have the strongest correlation of the students not only getting into four-year universities here in Massachusetts, but persisting and graduating out of our universities. And there we have the cleanest data in terms of knowing that our students that are finishing higher ed here in Massachusetts, these are Massachusetts students, to be really clear, we can see that they're making an annual income that's 20 to 30,000 more than in their comparable years. So we have that kind of data. So now let me go back to this data. So what we saw with the most recent results is about 42% overall of our students are meeting our rigorous standards. You can see what it looks like by grade level, pretty consistent across the grade levels. You can see how it compared to 2024, a small gain, from 2024. What I'm looking at, everyone, is where we were at in 2019. Because across the nation, the conversations are, which states are recovering faster? Are certain groups of kids recovering faster? And what you can see here, in no grade do we see any that we're recovering or that we've gone to recover going back to 2019 levels. By the way, it wasn't like 2019 was a grade anyways, right? But, and I say this to our school districts, I'm not saying that this is the goal to get back to 2019, but it's a foundation, right? Because we have to be able to build from there. So this was something that, again, that was very, and so we actually celebrated school districts. And I told my team, look, I won't even be picky. Like if you hit your pre-pandemic levels in ELA, English language arts, or math, like I want to know, like, how many do we have? So we have about 350 school districts. I want you to guess, how many do you think have achieved pre-pandemic levels in either in ELA and math together out of a 350? Somebody throw out a number. So we had 13. 13. And remember, this is all of the Commonwealth. And this is all public. There was a CPS article and there was a Boston Globe article about it. So it's only 13. By the way, what's fascinating is, and I'm just getting to know the Commonwealth, I'm looking for like some of our wealthier districts, right? I call them like the Lexingtons, the big W districts, that are, none of them are the group. And then we said, okay, well, how many are at least at pre-pandemic levels in one subject? And so we had 9 ELA only, 41 math. Math results. Math results, actually, we were flat overall. But still, again, look at the overall, how many of our students are meeting their standards, about 41%. Still, again, below pre-pandemic levels. And so we had a total of 63 districts that one subject or the other, and then 13 that were in both subjects. So the reason I bring this up is because of the early point I shared with you. What we see right now is that when students are meeting their standards, and again, some of them are meeting them from a young age. Some of them it can take a while because, again, our students don't start in the same place. We see the most success for them, beyond high school. Now, what's interesting is that we have amazing career tech programs, like the coolest, programs. I've been visiting them across the Commonwealth, but we have no really reliable data that our students finishing high school and not doing anything else can get a really well-paying job. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. Like, look, I say this, like, look, family, you can win the lottery, right? You can play the lottery. People win. We see it all the time on TV. Obviously, people have family businesses, right? So some of our kids can go into work in the family businesses, but at scale, we don't have any reliable data that if our students who finish high school and don't do anything beyond high school, that they can get a well-paying job. So again, I want to share these data points. So I bring this up because as we're struggling and we're seeing less of our students meeting our standards, for me, I'm bringing up this question and reinviting you to the Commonwealth and saying, look, what does this mean longer term? What does it mean for our universities? And without due respect to our universities, look, I get it. Like, maybe here at Harvard, it doesn't matter because you can get kids from all over the world. But then I have to ask the question, to our children in Massachusetts, with this wonderful higher ed footprint, how many of them are being able to take advantage of it? Right? Wonderful employment sector. How many of our children get to take advantage of it? Right? Like, again, no judgment, but really, we have an amazing higher ed footprint. What a shame if it's not being supporting our local community. Right? I mean, so those are the questions that I'm asking everybody. So this is what it looks like for grade 10. And then there was a lot of drama because this no longer is a graduation requirement. Now, Jim is part of our grad council, and Jim knows that we're going to be actually releasing a very, very comprehensive set of standards that students will have to meet in order to graduate from high school. So it's going to be course taking. We're one of less than 10 states that don't actually require a set of courses to graduate from high school. So by the way, you can be in high school X in one part of the state, completely different requirements. Like maybe I don't have to take 4 years of math. I don't have to take 3 years of science, right? Maybe it's just 2 years of math, right? Versus another high school in a different district which has a different requirement. And I've said this, everybody, there is nothing cooler than if you're one of those students who does everything you're supposed to do. You pass your courses, right? You challenge yourself, right? Like I used to say, like we're the good kids, right? And then you find out when you finish high school, like what the heck? I didn't get access to all this work, all this stuff. So for example, when I finished Benito Juarez in Chicago, I didn't have any advanced placement classes. I didn't know what those were. We're talking back in the 70s. Advanced placement classes have been existent for more, decades and decades. And then I get to college, and then I meet somebody, and they're like, "Oh, I have enough credits to be a junior in college." I'm like, "What? Like, how did you do that?" And I got to tell you, I was mad. I was angry. And I'll just say this: there's plenty of my colleagues. I'll just say from Chicago, but I would also say Massachusetts, all over the country. We are adults now, and we found out later that we didn't get the same access to this advanced coursework. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of people that are unhappy. So I always remind our superintendents and school leaders, I said, by the way, you might be serving their kids and you might be doing a lot better by their kids, but you still got those angry parents, uncles and aunts, and sometimes grandparents that did not get treated well by our system. So all that to say, everybody, this was our requirement for graduation, which you had to at least, and by the way, it wasn't even meeting our standards, it was even partially meeting us, a very low bar. But now we've taken the opportunity, since this is no longer a requirement, to really create a very comprehensive set of requirements that are going to be coming out publicly very soon. So again, more to come on that. So let me go back to, again, as we think about our, the role of our agency. So here, one of the things we did as part of our new graduation standards that we're going to release is we release what we call our vision for a graduate. So every, in most of our districts, they have what they call a vision for a graduate. Even when you were in high school, you might have had this. I love when I go to our high schools here in Massachusetts, students will tell you, they're like, yep, this is the values that our high school has. Right? So, our high schools want us to be, leaders. We want us to be academically prepared, effective communicators, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really for us to really shape a vision of what do we want our students to be able to, the qualities that we want our students to be able to have. Very tied to our vision. And you can see here, when you look at our agency, and, I've been here 4 months. When I look at, our vision, I said, no, still very aligned, right? And one of the things I always talk about is making sure, for example, that when we talk about students being valued and known, let's not forget our students with disabilities. Let's not forget our multilingual students. And then let's not forget our high poverty students, right? Because we say this all the time in districts and in schools, but again, what are our actions to really make sure that our structures, our systems, our practices are set up this way? And like I said, I love our career tech programs. I mean, that's where I'm seeing, like, I went to a career tech high school. They actually have a house on the campus, and they take it apart and put it together. You know what I mean? Like, as part of the construction program. And then they go out to the community and start doing renovations in the community. I'm like, this is so cool, right? So again, it's always this challenge, how do we connect the work that's happening in our high schools, again, with what real life experiences are? And then, of course, always providing the supports that our students need to meet our standards. Again, these are our strategic objectives. I won't spend a lot of time on them, but one thing I would just say, everybody, is, if there's one thing that I always emphasize a lot, especially for our students in high schools today, well, just in elementary, middle, and high school, is always making sure that our students actually feel a sense of joy. And just to be clear what I mean by a sense of joy. So think about you right now, right? So all of us here in this room, we stand in sort of a room of privilege, right? And here I am, inner city kid, but here I am right here talking to you at the Kennedy School, right? Talk about, like, it doesn't get better than that, than privilege, right? As the first Latino commissioner. But imagine if you were in a space where all the content you're hearing is way over your head. Imagine how scary that is. Imagine how that makes you feel as a human being, right? And so when I talk about joy, I'm talking about, let's challenge our students. Let's build up, their muscles to be able to handle rigor, to handle complexity. Because let's face it, the rest of the world that's what it's gonna be. When they get to the college or university, they're gonna have to deal with that complexity and rigor. It doesn't get easier, folks. Nobody says, oh, that's Pedro Martinez. He grew up the oldest of 12 kids. His family income was $15,000 a year. Oh my goodness, no. We have to do something different with it. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. It's never worked that way in the employment sector, right? In all my job experiences, they're like, hey, what are you going to do to help us, whether it's to hit our financial targets, that's what it's always been. In my colleges, the professors were like, there was no joke. Many times, I was at U of I Champaign. I had classes with 1,100 students. Literally. And then we had TAs. So if I didn't show up for school, nobody even building up those muscles for our students, because, and I say this, everybody, our students of poverty, our society is not kind to people of poverty. They're not valued, and their time is not valued, for sure. So this is where I'll just spend a little bit more time, and then I want to go into Q&A. So this is the priorities that we're right now laying out. So real quickly, just a couple seconds on each one. So one of the things that we see in our data, we have on average right now, students who are chronically absent. So let me give you what that definition is in Massachusetts. So if you're absent 18 days out of a 180-day school year, you are designated as chronically absent. We have, even though we've gotten better, we still have some of the highest chronic absenteeism rates that we've seen. By the way, this is a national issue. On average, for Massachusetts, students who are chronically absent, they're absent 31 days. So think about that for a second. 31 school days that they're actually absent. What's interesting about our data, students who are chronically absent, they are at least one grade level below in meeting our standards. What's fascinating is students that are not chronically absentee, and this is the average, they're just below meeting our standards. Like literally, like right there. Just that data point alone. And again, I'm simplifying it, but again, for me, I'm using this to tell our families and communities, like, it's important for your children to be in school. I get it. Look, I might be, at my age, I'm going to show my age. Yeah, like, I get it. Technology's here. I know there's all kinds of, learning styles, but I would challenge you again. Think of it again as points of privilege, right? If you have a beautiful home with all the infrastructure, and hey, why not, right? In fact, we showed in Chicago, our high school students actually did okay during the pandemic, but they didn't enjoy it. They felt no joy from it. And many of them deferred college for a year. So many of them that the university started calling and saying, yo, superintendent, oh my God, your students are not going to college, and and they're panicking. And I said, give them some space. They just went through a horrendous, experience, not even able to go to their graduations. You took away their joy. So give them some space, and don't worry, it will recover, and it did, right? So again, always remembering our students who need access to high quality facilities, high quality instruction, especially our students that are furthest from opportunity, they're the ones that get hurt the most when they don't have that. Other priorities, doubling down on literacy. making sure, you saw only about 40% of our students are meeting our standards at third grade. So making sure that we continue to double down because our students don't start in third grade, right? If you remember, hopefully you started in preschool. I started in first grade because I came to Mexico when I was 6. So hopefully, our students start a lot earlier. I see some amazing opportunities in something we call early college. Early college has been something that I've been a champion of. I really first saw it in Texas. Texas is probably if not the top state, one of the earliest states to start creating early college programs. This is where our high school students can actually take college classes. Community colleges, universities, by the way, in Chicago and San Antonio, we had partnerships with Harvard, where kids were actually taking virtual classes, with Harvard, but like the coolest stuff, like things around, equity and things, very cool classes that our high schools couldn't offer. So huge. So right now, we are at the very beginning stages of that initiative here in Massachusetts. Our career tech, like I said, if you ever get a chance to visit our regional career tech schools, they are state of the art. The amount of resources that are in these schools, I have never seen it. I mean, and in Nevada, they're phenomenal career tech program. I mean, phenomenal in Nevada. Nowhere near the level of the resourcing here. Nowhere even close. I mean, amazing. And many of our children want to go to these regional academies, whether it's in construction, whether it's IT. Like I'm seeing students doing cloud computing in high school. I mean, it's just the coolest stuff. And then, as I said earlier about our vision, we have such a large population of both students with disabilities, the highest number of students with IEPs that we've ever seen. By the way, not just here in Massachusetts, nationwide, more multilingual students than ever before. So again, we got to make sure that our structures are set up and our practices. I hope there's some people in the room here that are thinking about being teachers. I will hire you on the spot. I mean, I have 3 sisters that are teachers, kindergarten, middle school, and high school. Rosie is a 14-year veteran. Teresa is a 17-year veteran, and Anna is a 20-year veteran. And they're in my ear all the time. And they're teacher leaders. Like, not only are they teachers, they mentor other teachers, and they remind me how hard it is to be a teacher today. Our children have a lot of needs, and there's a lot that is being put on our teachers, especially if you're working with children of poverty, children with IEPs, or multilingual. And by the way, many times all those children are in the same room. Yep. Right? And you have to figure out how to really be effective. So huge initiative around. We want to expand teacher pipelines, and with that, what I've always seen is when we expand them, we also get diversity. It's just the way it works. And then the last one is I really want to approach the work a little bit different here than we've done in the past. So as a commissioner, I am amazed at the kind of powers I have. I can take over districts, I can take over schools. I mean, it's like, remember, inner city kid from Chicago, you know what I mean? So it's like, so for me, it's like, look at this. And so, but what I also know from doing this work for more than 20 years, the best way to have sustainable results and really accelerate student achievement, it's what I saw in Nevada, what I saw in San Antonio, what I saw in Chicago, is you got to build the systems and structures, and you got to have the ownership. And by the way, and I'm very protective of this, you can't put it all on our teachers. You can't put it all on our school leaders. This has to be a coalition. It has to be a community, really initiative, because we're dealing with multiple challenges here. And I would just say, I'll end with this, everybody. Especially in many of our urban districts and even our rural communities, what we're dealing with is poverty. One of the things that I've known for doing this work for more than 20 years, whether you're in Chicago, whether you're in San Antonio, whether you're in Denver, when a child grows up in poverty, they are at least 2 grade levels below when they start school. And you're like, well, how can that be? So look, my parents had a secondary education. My father was working 2 jobs all of his life. He was just trying to keep the family together. And by the way, I didn't appreciate it. I was angry. I was that angry kid. I'm like, really? I saw the Brady Bunch, big family, nice house. I'm like, how come they got that? We don't got that. I mean, literally, right? That was me. Fast forward, my wife and I, graduate degrees. My wife is a researcher and a policy expert. And then I have 2 kids here, 15-year-old who just started high school, and an 11-year-old who's in 6th grade, about to be 30, because she feels like she knows everything, Their experience is so different than ours. So different than my wife's and I, who are both of us are first generation. So different.
My children would be in Rex's since they were in the womb, like literally. And so, our favorite thing to do is to go to libraries. And my fight with my kids, especially before we started letting them more access to technology, is how many books to check out. Because they'd be like, 20 is enough, Lucas. 20 is enough. Like, dude, like 20, you know what I mean? Like, that was the fight. Like, he's like, no, I need 30. I need 30. Because he had collections that he was, I'm like, really? And then he learned how to get, schools from other libraries. So I'm like, then forget it. Then he was like empowered. That's how my children are growing up. Very different than myself and my siblings. So let me stop here, everybody. Again, love to take any questions, but please.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll kick it off with a question, and we'll open it up. So one thing that it's very clear in terms of your own presentation is the passion and urgency you feel about the work. But I sort of feel like the zeitgeist has sort of lost its sense of urgency or prioritization around this particular issue. And that, manifests itself in politics and the kinds of things we talk about, but even sort of at the community level and to some extent in schools, like let's call it reform fatigue, or disenchantment or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about how to sort of generate that sense of broader urgency and commitment to this work?
Yeah, so Jim, I think number one, everybody, and I'm showing it to you today, what I'm sharing with you, literally, I'm sharing with superintendents, with school committee members, with different partners, whether it's from the business world, from the philanthropic world, or from our nonprofit world, who are actually right there partnering with our districts. And so one of the things, Jim, that I'm doing is just creating more awareness. I think it's very easy because of the pandemic, and this is nationwide, it was really easy for those who already were against, state assessments. I'll use the bigger word, accountability. It was really easy for for them to come in and so because it was a vacuum. I mean, and that vacuum got filled by different groups in different states. It looked different in red states. When I was in Texas, it looked a little different in blue states. But the reality is that, what is happening is I think we've confused parents. In some cases, we're confusing our teachers about, okay, so what is it that we're valuing? And so what I want to do, Jim, is continue to remind everybody, first of all, you're Massachusetts. We are Massachusetts because I'm here now. And again, don't forget that. I mean, at the end of the day, how did you get to be where you're at? And don't forget that you have more students than ever that are depending on these rigorous standards. I mean, everybody, for those people who say, hey, I don't know if I'll take a year off to go to college, generally I tend to find those are the people that, oh yeah, because I can go to Europe for a year. I can go to Spain for a year. If you're a high poverty kid, I got no other way. I got no other ticket. When I was in Chicago, Jim, we brought in the trades. And I'll never forget this. Some of my students would be like, sir, I need this now. Like, I need to work now. And so when we brought in like the electricians and the plumbers, and they're like, this is what I need right now. Right? And I'm like, and it really hit me. And it just reminded me when I was their age, because I always worked since I was 16, because I had to pay for my own clothes. I didn't want to be a burden on my family, who already had a lot on their plate. And so it's just a reminder for me, Jim, again, how we sit in different levels of, I'll call it an entitlement, right? And kudos, right? Like, look, I want to be mad at my 15-year-old and 11-year-old, but then it's like, damn it. The reason my wife and I worked so hard was so that they wouldn't go through what we went through, right? But so many of our children are still going through this, Jim. And so I just feel like I have to remind people. I have to remind them and to know that they're all around us. So whether they're in Boston or whether they're in the most rural part of the state, they're there. And I'm visiting, I'm seeing them, and I'm meeting these children. And by the way, it's not the children. My God, the level of talent, the potential, I mean, my goodness. I was in Lawrence, one of our highest poverty communities. When we welcome our staff, the convocation for staff, they did like a little piece of a Lion King production. By the way, it was high school students, middle school students, everybody. I swear to you, if you close your eyes, it was a Disney production. You would have never known it was a high school production. So I'm like, don't tell me that these kids don't have any talent. Don't even go there. This is an adult issue. And so, Jim, for me, it's like, I'm trying to balance it because I'm trying to,
you know, because there's, again, I'm new, you know, so I want to be careful. So I'm trying to have this leverage of, let me give you the facts. Let me remind you why we do this work. And then, by the way, I'm going to walk the talk. We're gonna align our priorities in the agency. I'm gonna align every resource that I have and all the resources as I'm meeting individuals and say, look, I want you to come join us. Come under the tent. Got nothing to hide, you know? And all we want is again, we want our students to take advantage of these amazing resources that are here. My goodness. I mean, I have so many stories. You know, as I visited, like, I'm like, oh my God, this exists here, like in Massachusetts. Like, I mean, it's just like I mean, I'm telling you, you can't take the inner city kid out of me. I'm still like, what? So, anyways, more stories for as we get into the Q&A.
Oh, you have a question?
Well, let's see what the.
All right, let's open it up. Commissioner, you take the lead here. I don't have
wasn't
enough
actually
courage.
facilitate for me, but we'll start here and then we'll go back there. Yes.
Daniel Calderon. I moved here this summer from Seattle. I was a district administrator, a principal as well. And
I love it.
you talked about the problem,
What level were you principal?
middle school.
Look at that. Yeah. You gotta have a special heart to work in middle school. I'm just telling you right now. Yeah.
You said that you're amazed at the power you have as commissioner and that systems and structures need to have shared ownership. What do you see as the state uniquely positioned to do to support school and district improvement, in particular in the places that need it most, and now especially?
It's a great question. So, you know, again, all my work, everybody's always been leading districts. And it was always nice if I had some backing from the state superintendent commissioner. I always had good relationships, never had a bad one. But I actually, for the first time in Texas, which the district was a really low performing district, I actually had like real support from the state commissioner. Like he actually said to me, he said, Pedro, blame me. Like, you know, because when he met me and my board president, and he loved my board president. It's like, okay, we finally have leadership that are willing to make big changes, right? The reform pieces, right, Jim? And he said, blame me. You know, so when people go after you and because nobody likes change, everybody. Blame me. So I see one, I can give superintendents cover. If they're willing to do the right things. We can be a convener. I also, and I really believe this, as an agency, we are the guardrails about telling the truth. By the way, always partnering with research partners, right? Because it's all about evidence, right? I may have certain viewpoints, but I got to be able to back it up with evidence. So we can be that. And then what's really interesting in our Commonwealth is being able to look at challenges. So for example, I might be in a certain part of the state where they have some serious teacher pipeline issues. Well, if they're by themselves, it's really hard for them to solve that. But imagine we bring a group of them together. Imagine we leverage our relationships and say, hey, Jim, you know, or, you know, other people that I'm getting to know, like, hey, you have this wonderful teacher pipeline program. Is there something we can do in this region of the state? You know, Mary Skipper and I are developing a really good relationship. I have a lot of admiration for Mary here. She's the superintendent of Boston. But I tell her something. I said, well, you know, Mary, I'm a little jealous of you. The amount of resources that are in this part of the state, like it's wonderful. But what about like the other parts of the state? You know? So I think it's us elevating that in a way that, again, that isn't like trying to shame anybody, but just to say, hey, could we think about the entire state? And I think that we're in a unique position. Yes.
Thank you for being here, Commissioner.
Thank you.
My name is Carrie L. I'm also a Chicagoan, so I really appreciated your efforts. I noticed
What high school? What high school?
Well, this man over here was principal of North London.
Oh my God! Oh yeah! Oh my God! So many cool stuff. Yeah.
I noticed that one of your core competencies were intentional collaborators, and I've been trying to explore family engagement more.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of the harm that comes with parents who've been in the same systems, in the same schools, who they just have a bit of mistrust. How have you worked to rebuild that relationship and center those people?
Yeah. So first of all, there's no easy work to doing this, and you know, one of the partners that I want to bring in is Dr. Karen Mapp. You know, she and I go way back. She always says this, and I always think about this. She says, you know, Pedro, don't look at family engagement as like an initiative. You think of it as a strategy. Like, how do you use it as a strategy to actually get to the goals you want, right? Whether it's increasing student achievement, whether it's making sure our children really do see the opportunity for them. So I think, for me, it is around how do we build those structures? So it's interesting. I was in Chelsea. I don't know if any of you have ever visited Chelsea. They have a ways to go academically, but I got to tell you, in terms of the structures of how they engage families and community, I mean, it blew my mind. Like, I was in a room like full of people like this, and it was all these different, people from the community, parents. You're seeing more and more like graduates not coming to work for the district. So I think there's a magic there that, again, high poverty district, one of the highest districts of multilingual students in our Commonwealth. But I could see it. I could see the potential there. So part of it for us is let's elevate those kind of practices. I mean, I have a lot of ideas from San Antonio and Chicago and Nevada, but frankly, part of the work that I want to do is let's really find strong practices in our Commonwealth, because whether I like it or not, look, we're Massachusetts, right? So at the end, it's like, do you really want to hear how Chicago's doing things when you're Massachusetts? Do you really want to hear San Antonio, Texas? Like Texas, you know what I mean? Like, people always have a certain reaction to the southern part of the country. Like, really? Like, look, whatever, right? At the end of the day, good practice is good practice. And as long as it's evidence-based, but for me, let's elevate that. But that's what I want to do. But it is systems and structures. It is working with individuals like Dr. Mapp. And I think just bringing those resources to the districts. And there's a hunger for it. I'll tell you right now, there's a real hunger for it. Others.
Hi, thank you so much for being here, Commissioner. So I taught in San Antonio ISD.
Oh my God!
And
Let's go.
Thomas Jefferson. Great
You
place.
Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
No.
But so many of my students benefited from the bilingual program that you initiated.
Yeah.
And it was a place where many of my students found joy and belonging within our school.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, from all of your experiences, how do you make programs like these that promote joy within our school sustainable with state budgets drying up a bit and then also political pressures combining?
So I'm really glad you brought this up. So I've been pleasantly impressed by a lot of things in Massachusetts, a lot of things. One of the areas that I was severely disappointed is our history of multilingual students. It wasn't until I believe 2017, around that time, that actually our state allowed bilingual programs, much less even dual language programs. So we are behind the rest of the country. So in San Antonio, I had the perfect conditions for dual language because majority of my population was not only Spanish speaking, but they also had a Mexican descent, right? Sometimes third generation, sometimes like it's really fascinating, like the different generations. And it was like the perfect conditions for dual language, right? And we took it all the way to high school. And to your point, like seeing those students and that joy, oh my God. I mean, to this day, it still runs with chills. Like we took some students from Jefferson from the band program to go to New Orleans to do a conference, the IB International Conference, like 50,000 people. And if you would have seen my kids from San Antonio, oh my God, their pride came out. And I said, this is the power when you really elevate identity, when you elevate culture. We are way behind here in Massachusetts. By the way, with that, tons of opportunities. I love the fact that Framingham actually has a dual language, a Portuguese dual language, because they have a huge Brazilian population, right? Lawrence has a large Dominican population. So I see these wonderful communities. By the way, we're doing a research right now, just looking at different multilingual populations. And it's really fascinating. Like the Haitian community, fascinating, like the stuff we're seeing right now. They're actually the one that's probably the strongest right now, which is really interesting. Dominican struggling a bit. Our Brazilian population is fascinating. They do okay in our K-12 system, but they don't tend to stay for higher ed. So again, it begs more questions. So all that to say, it's a huge opportunity. I think we're really behind when it comes to our multilingual students. But with that, we're Massachusetts. And I will tell you, resources are relative. It's all relative. And I'll tell you, I've never seen, I'm trying to be careful how I say this because people get really defensive. I've never seen the level of resources that we have here in my other states, including Chicago, and their resources are pretty good. I've never seen it. So it's interesting. Yes, our budget's getting tighter, but imagine when you're starting up here
compared to Texas, where you're down here. It feels different. So again, plenty of opportunity. But by the way, a lot of hard work because we got to build up the teacher pipelines. We got to build up the capacity, but the opportunities are there. Others? Yes, sir.
Thanks for being here. As she said, I led on the west side of Chicago, but I went to Lindblom, so I'm a South Sider through and through. I'm thinking about, you just stated that Massachusetts has ample resources, right? So what do you see?
Example, I just like
More.
Right.
It's all relative. Not putting words in your mouth. What do you see as three, or your top two, if you will, structural or policy barriers that you are thinking about? Like, how do you remove to allow for innovation for superintendents, and particularly, like, I think we need more risk taking right now of superintendents.
It's a great question. And so one is, and Jim started touched on it in the beginning, I'm still trying to understand why we sort of took our urgency of uncertainty, and we did. So I'm going to call it out. Like, let's not mince words about it. And there's a lot of frustration. It's fascinating. Like, there's so much emotion in your messages, like a lot of frustration. And I'm just listening. I'm like, okay, just understanding that. And so I think one is we have to start with that first, right? We have to elevate the student achievement matters, why it matters. And I have to remind people why it matters, right? Because look, if you're a wealthier family from, and you live in Lexington, you may not care that Lexington is not even at pre-pandemic levels because your kid is probably going to be okay, right? But again, we have to think in a bigger way about our Commonwealth. So one is just making sure we continually push that. The other is it is an interesting opportunity because we have a lot of districts and schools that are struggling. So it's interesting because people like to pick on like Lawrence, right, which is 95% kids of color, 90% kids of poverty. I'm like, don't pick on Lawrence, because actually, when I look at them relative to other districts, they're actually showing some interesting growth, more than other places. And there are plenty of company of districts that are struggling in schools, plenty of company, because this is statewide. So we're right now thinking about an opportunity of like, can we create a statewide initiative that both says, look, we're going to raise the bar about what our expectations are. We want to do it in an environment where it's not with hammers. So I almost think of it as like this, the story of two states. So one of my former states, Texas, they're on this path of like takeovers. They took over Houston. It was really hard for them to do it, but then now they got their kind of like, So now they're talking about Fort Worth, and trust me, they got a list of 10 districts that are on the big cities, by the way, that they're looking at. And so, and I'm like, okay, that's one way to do it. But what if we did it a third way, right? So there's like, do nothing, go down with the hammers, I got the power. Or like, how about a third way, which is, what if we create conditions and environments where like, hey, you got the cover of the commissioner, let's align the resources. I'm not saying that you have enough. That's why I don't like to use the word ample, but it's more. It's more. I can show you the evidence of that. By the way, interesting, like so many dynamics of our finances. And then let's talk about, okay, what is actually happening in your school? What do you need as a school leader? What do you need to support your teachers? And I'm going to be working directly with the superintendents, right? But at the end, I'm going to remind them, my interest is the school. Because trust me, there's drama always, and I've seen it in my share of superintendencies. There's always drama on the superintendent level. But at the end of the day, where we have the most impact is at the school level. If we empower our teachers, if we empower our school leaders, trust me, in those results, if you do them right, they will sustain any other shifts that happen, right? So that's what I see as a huge opportunity. It'll be a big initiative, bigger than they've ever seen here. So we're in the process of kind of getting the pieces together on that.
Thank you.
A huge opportunity, huge opportunity. By the way, anybody who wants to work in Massachusetts, got plenty of it's a really pretty state. I'm just telling you, if you're from here, it's a really pretty state. Like you go down to Western Mass, you got the mountains, you got all these different bodies of water. Like it's a real, I'm not kidding. I would not tell you, I would not lead you the wrong way. I promise you. Just think about that for leadership roles in Massachusetts. Yes.
Hi, I'm actually from Massachusetts.
Yes,
I'm a
yes,
native,
yes.
so Western Mass, my
Yeah.
favorite. Nicole, I'm studying ed policy at the School of Ed. So I grew up in the state and I was an educator for the last 7 years. I worked in the Big W, Wellesley,
Uh-huh.
and then spent the last 5 in Milton.
Yeah.
But I've worked with the disadvantaged student population. I was a special educator, and then right now I'm actually working in Chelsea, working with directors to help our multilingual
So
ed
you
population.
see what I'm seeing in Chelsea.
Yeah. So I really connected with a lot you were saying. But I'm curious, like as a practitioner and now as like a district leader, my question continues to be like, how do we set, rigorous standards for these
Yeah.
students, but be flexible? But how do we measure that in terms of like accountability?
Yeah. It's a great question. So one thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to lower the standards, because I think mistakes that I've seen being made across my career, especially when I went into districts who like for years, it wasn't like people weren't trying. Like I'm like, okay, what the heck happened here? And sometimes just, and I always use this analogy, when somebody's lost and they're trying to get to somewhere very, and they're like on a, they got to get there at a certain time, you go and tell them, oh, slow down. Just go slower. And that will get you there, right? That's what we do in education. We're like, slow down. It's actually the opposite. Let me give you the shortcut. Let me show you where you can actually go over the speed limit, and then we'll give you a ticket, right? Like how do we get there faster? And so I really believe one, we have to ground everything with strong practices. Shame on us. And today, it was fascinating in Chicago. The district had never had a district-wide curriculum. Ever. Like local control is like no joke in Chicago. Forget the district. It's at the school level. It's at the school level. It's no joke. Like as superintendent and CEO, I couldn't mandate like curriculum. Like it just wasn't a thing. So imagine 634 schools and they get to all do their own thing. I mean, that's how it is in Chicago. And so, but when we had the pandemic, we had this like almost once in a lifetime opportunity because they realized, as individual schools, we can't get through this. And a lot of the gains they had seen, like they evaporated and they were scared. Like our school leaders have a lot of pride, especially those who've been in Chicago for 10, 20, they have a lot of pride. And they're like, and it was gone. So I'm the new kid, right? From Chicago, from the district. And they're like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I'm like, well, what if we like actually work together as a system? Let's try that, right? And by the way, not mandating things, but let's try it. So we introduced, some evidence-based curriculum and literacy. And the complaint I got was from the teachers were like, oh my God, it's working, but not enough teachers are being trained. And I told my team, I said, pay attention to that. Their biggest complaint is that not enough teachers are being trained and they're seeing results. We started with the students with disabilities because they were the ones that were really struggling during the pandemic. And then we spread it to our students of poverty. And all of a sudden, schools that had never seen literacy gains started seeing them. And we became, the top performing district for Black students and Latino students in terms of the recovery and literacy. And so it's a lesson for me of like, this is what happens when our teachers, when our school leaders, when our practitioners actually see something that's effective. You don't have to sell them on it. Like they want to do it. Like that's why they're there. Like it's, like that's why they became teachers. And so for us, what I see is let's bring those best practices. And a lot of times in Jim knows this, you get caught in the politics, right? But again, these are adult trauma issues. This is not about the kids, everybody. So my goal, especially with my experience, is to really leverage that. And so far, as I talk to superintendents, I've talked to school leaders, it's resonating with them. So I think it's us, again, let's set those conditions. We know good practices already, whether it's literacy, we have, math is still like an interesting one. That's still, by the way, there's still a lot of, really almost a little bit more research needs to be done because many of our districts still struggle with math. Like literacy, we've seen bigger gains nationwide in literacy. Math, because it's so I think it's because it's so sequential, right? Like our students that really struggle through the pandemic with math. I mean, it's still a struggle. But all that to say, there are some strong practices we can put in place. We can put strong conditions.
And I think the key is then again, giving those leaders, whether it's at district level or at the school level, to say, hey, again, as Commissioner Brad told me, hey, blame me. Right? You know, your school committee doesn't want to do this. Your mayor doesn't want, the mayors are all involved here. Mayor don't want to do it. Hey, blame me. Got the commissioner on my back. Got to do something. Right? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Maggie. I'm also at the Graduate School of Education and a former Title I elementary school teacher. I'm curious, can you share any of the resources you're hoping to leverage, especially in impoverished communities?
It's a great question. So first of all, again, I got to be careful. I got really defensive when I made some comments when I first started. So we have what we call the Student Opportunity Act that is now being phased in. It's going to be in its last year next year. But what was interesting is significant amount of investment, and it happened at our highest poverty districts. It wasn't perfect. There's a lot of districts that it's like this thing of like this group. Oh my God, really strong investment. The next group, very like a little bit, and then this group like not much, right? And so not perfect, but those resources have been being phased in over the last few years. So that's number one. By the way, it was actually decided before the pandemic. So I made the mistake when I came in, and because there was a lot of advocacy to get there, and kudos to all the advocacy. And I made the mistake of saying, well, like, oh my God, to be like in this time in Massachusetts where you got federal money and you got Student Opportunity Act, we're like, oh my, like talk about it was like Christmas. And the superintendents did not like that. They got very defensive. So, but all that to say that investment's been going on. The one thing I appreciate about our Commonwealth, and I really mean this for those of you who are not from here, this is one of the first states that I've seen, like they walk the talk. Like, and I see it in evidence. There's stuff that I see here like this would never fly in Texas. Never. They would never add this kind of money. Maybe Illinois parts of it, but even there it would be like a fight. It wouldn't even be like, you'd have to have like a fight. Here, it's the alignment here, like the investment here. I've never seen it at this level. So one, it's aligning resources. One of the requests we made we have what we call fair share here. Requests, and so fair share requests we're making right now. This is money that's restricted specifically for either education or transportation. We made a very small request fair share and say, look, we have a lot of schools that are struggling. I'll quantify for you how much you're already investing right now. Right, this is for the legislature, the governor, the lieutenant governor. I'll quantify it for you. I just need a little bit to make sure that those resources are really aligned. Because I know that there's struggles right now. And as I'm visiting districts, I'm talking to superintendent. Like this is not me sitting in the office just looking at a whole bunch of charts, everybody. Like I'm in the field more. Thousands of miles that I put on right now, just drive. But again, beautiful state. I'm not kidding. I've seen it. So I am, I'm going deep to really understand what's going on in the field. So I think there's an alignment of resources, that there's an opportunity there. I think there's still going to be, some smaller investments that we can add on just to really again, to create that perfect alignment, or not perfect, but at least again, that better alignment. So the good news is there are states right now, everybody, where they have these aspirations. At least in the short term, we'll never have this type of resources ever, and I can tell you, like being in Texas, probably ever. So as much as we talk about our southern states, and God bless them, they're serving like really, high poverty children, they just don't even have anywhere near the level of investment that we have. And, and that, again, I don't know if it's good or bad, right? It is what it is. Here, I really feel like we have an opportunity because we do have those resources. And, and I'll just hopefully preach to the choir on this. It takes more resources to support children with more needs. And I always have to say that. So yes, accountability matters. Get it. Accountability without the resources doesn't work. The resources without accountability doesn't work. So shame on us if we don't have both, right? Because you need both, especially for our children furthest from opportunity, because those are the children that will always pay the price for it.
So I've always felt that the high school has been the most challenging part of the educational system.
Yes, sir.
I realize that since the pandemic, there's serious problems at the elementary and middle schools, which you've highlighted here. But it's also the case that we have this, long-standing problem of adolescents feeling that the school makes no sense to them. And the accountability system at the high school was just never there, really. One exam in high school, a statewide exam, that sophomores should be able to pass, but it never made any sense, really. Now, given the fact that a lot of the rules have changed and been thrown out the window, so to speak, have you thought about putting into place tests that you can study, but not tests that there's teacher grades, because we have discovered that doesn't necessarily work. But statewide or sort of, we can learn from the Europeans. They do this all the time. If you take a course, you have to get credit for the course, or to get you're evaluated, you're assessed by some kind of an exam, whether it's in chemistry, biology, or whatever the subject is. You are going to be assessed. Are you thinking of possibly introducing?
We are, Paul, and James will tell you. So very comprehensive set of requirements you're putting in. So course requirements for the first time, because my students never had that. Much more stronger advising, because that's another sort of my pet peeves is we do all these great things academically with our children, and then we don't give them advisement so we really understand their options, right? Because if you're a first generation kid, you don't know. You just don't know, right? So that's in there. This as we talk about how do we know our students are mastering or meeting our standards, that's where all the point of contention has been. And we are actually introducing that, actually assessments for certain courses. And what I'm really going to be pushing the districts is, where they're going to matter is, if a student's not doing well in those assessments, what are you going to do? And it isn't just retaking the assessment, which is what we did with the old system. They didn't do well, retake. They didn't do well again, retake. Next thing you know, these kids are seniors, still trying to take a 10th grade exam. And by the way, at that point, their anxiety is so high, we even lost the whole point of what we were trying to accomplish. So what I really want to do is to change the conversation and say, look, we know right now that, first of all, to take advantage of our amazing higher ed system, there's certain course requirements they got to have. We know that. And we have research on it, by the way. We have research about their success. We know it. We know that if our students meet the standards at some point, they also have a lot more success. So how do we bring these conversations together and say, and by the way, remember, when our student, let's say it's an algebra exam, now they're going to have to take algebra 2. Now they're going to have to take, pre-cal or stats, right? They need 4 years of math. And I don't want those kids to be afraid of math or science or English, right? Because that's what happens to everybody. When our students don't feel confident in one of those content areas, like that fear follows them into college. So again, let's go back to remembering what these kids are going through, right? And pushing us as adults to say the goal is they have to feel confident with that content. And then I think it's amazing. Think about the opportunities for research, right? Imagine like those nuggets that we can get in terms of like, okay, what do we really need to know for our students, especially students of first generation? So, I mean, what do we, in these areas, how do we get them set up for college? And then, right, one of my biggest passions, I say this, there's no better way to say if a student's prepared for college than if they're in college. Put them in college. Put them in college classes when they're ready, junior year, senior year of high school. So I'll tell you, you build up that armor, and then all of a sudden this kid is like, wasn't sure if college was for me, but now heck. And then at first they were thinking, well, maybe I'll go to the community college, maybe I'll go to get a certificate. Then they start taking college classes, and they're like, so what does it take to get a graduate degree? That's the way I need you to think, right? So building those aspirations. So for me, minimum standards, what you just said earlier, Joe. Start with that, right? Which is really around mastering and getting them closer to meet our standards. But even with that, saying, okay, no, again, let's accelerate. And the way you accelerate is you start bringing those college courses into the high schools. We have a very beginning start of that in Massachusetts. To be honest, I gotta hear what I say. So again, very beginning start. I have a lot of ideas of how to build that, but it will be complementary to what we're doing with our grad standards. And I see a lot of potential. Yes.
Kind of going off of that, like in high schools, I grew up in like the Connecticut public school system, but
By the way, so I always say like I think that's just a little prettier than Connecticut. So no.
terrible.
I'm here now. Like, I want to steal teachers from Connecticut because we got districts that are poor. I'm like, hey, why don't you steal teachers from Connecticut? I mean,
but I have to think about how like students like in like less funded schools, like the opportunity to get like SAT prep or like understand career pathways and stuff, which is like so critical to like the opportunity to go to a good higher ed institution, is often not equal. And like I think especially like immigrant children like myself, like our parents worked extra jobs to get us people to help me with SAT prep or reading my college essays because English wasn't their first language and they don't know how to read the college essays. So like, what are your thoughts around that type of like, it's not really just core curriculum, but like those type of supports that I think are really what helps differentiate students and let them kind of know the opportunities / get to where they want.
Yeah, no. So one of the when we announce our what we require for students to graduate, one of them is going to be around this heavy. We call it my cap here, which is career and college sort of advising. I'll tell you both especially in San Antonio and Chicago, like we doubled down on this. Like this was no joke for us. This was like, we actually invested in more counselors. We actually had structures specifically for all of this. And I did something, I didn't have the resources that Chicago had, so it was a fraction of it of what I did, what I could do in San Antonio. But I'll tell you, for me, it's a so what. So again, we can get the kids exposed to the content they need. We can even get them to hopefully meet our standards. And then it's a so what, right? I mean, again, knowledge is such a powerful thing here in our country, right? And so that's the reason why there's such a correlation to income when you look at college completion rates. Have you ever looked at this research? We have more students than ever attending universities and four-year colleges than ever, by the way. I mean, going back to the 1970s, like we've narrowed the gaps. Completion rates? No, not at all. Even if you're a high-performing academic student, if you're in the lowest quartile of income, your probability of completing a four-year degree is less than 10%. If you're in the high quartile, doesn't matter what your academic preparation is, your probability is over 75%. Think about that for a second. That gap has never been wider in our country. And then you're like, well, how can that be? I'll tell you how that can be. My kid goose off, which he is right now a little bit in high school. My wife and I will kill him. It will not be pleasant in my house, right? But you think my son's going to be okay? Heck yeah. One way or another, we'll figure out how to get him his post-secondary degree. We'll figure it out. What parent wouldn't? Anybody here in this, you wouldn't do the same for your kid? Like, let's face it, right? You're going to do it. But why? Because you have access to that. Because you know people. You'd be like, Jam, I just need to inspire my son. Can he just shadow you for a little bit? Right? I know a doctor. Oh, can he inspire? Can he just, right?
No, he's a goof off. I don't know if I really.
No, he's moving off of it. He's ninth grader.
All right.
His grades are okay, but you know what I mean. Like,
send him up, bring him up.
Yeah. But you see my point? So again, and so not that this is the equalizer, but setting up structures. I just came from the One Goal Conference, which is a great nonprofit partner that works with our kids this way. And by the way, it's like within the system, also partners outside the system, but really helping students see these opportunities. I mean, I visited this amazing after-school program in Boston, where they actually pay the students to be part of this. It's a STEM program. OMG, everybody! If you see the resource they have in this entity, it is like beautiful. And some of the students, by the way, they have professors coming in from one of the universities, and they're learning computer science. I mean, so again, when you start bringing these structures together, like helping students be able to see, like, okay, this is what's possible in industry. Here's what, here's the guidance, we can help you to get to college. I mean, so that all of this is going to be part of the graduation requirements. And again, easier said than done, right? Which is why, like I was in a room today with a whole bunch of, individuals that are from this world. And I said, I'm going to need all of you because we have over 70,000 high school seniors graduating every single year.
So it's nice if you're serving 100 kids, but I need you to serve 1,000. If you're serving 1,000, how do you get to 10,000? Right? Because that's what we need at scale. And God bless you if you're in the east side of Massachusetts. Nice. But I got a whole state. I got the whole west side of Massachusetts that, what do they got? Right. And so I think it's something that, again, you're going to see us really pushing as part of our grad requirements.
Hey, Michael, is there any comments or questions on Zoom? Okay, great. We probably have time for one more question.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah. No pressure. Make it a good one.
Yes. I'm curious, so going back to the graduation requirements, with workforce changing so much with the development of AI, how is that going to be incorporated into building student skills and proficiency with AI so that they can leverage that into future job markets?
It's a good question, but I want to take it a little bit, just slant it a little bit. And this is more of a plea for my higher ed colleagues here. I am very worried that, so in K-12, we have blind spots. One of our blind spots, frankly, is employment. We don't have good data. I want to know what happens to all the kids that I've ever served in San Antonio, in Chicago, in Nevada. I have no data. And the closest I got to it was an organization called Burning Glass, who has a database of 150 million people in the workforce, but they couldn't even give me enough granularity to be like, well, can you tell me about my kids in Chicago? They couldn't even have that. And so my fear right now is that AI is disrupting the workforce. It's mostly happening, I think, in the entry level. Definitely computer science, definitely in certain industries like the tech industry. But again, I don't have any real information, if that makes sense. I have what other people have access to, right? I see Amazon's laying off 30,000 employees. Okay. What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? And so my plea to my higher ed colleagues is higher ed has it. Higher ed, for whatever reason, is not as transparent as K-12. I'm sorry. Never has been. They're very defensive. And so they have it. So my plea to higher ed, give us that information in K-12. What is it that we need to know right now about what's happening in the changing workforce? You may not even know either, but you have information because that should inform our advising. Again, I remember what I said earlier. Nothing crueler than you're that kid. You did everything you're supposed to do. And then you found out, I didn't have access to this information. I would have made some different decisions. Maybe I would have adjusted some things. Never even had access to that information. Not because my counselor didn't want to give it to me, not because the teacher didn't want to give it to me, because it just didn't exist for them either. So that's my biggest concern about AI. I think AI has an amazing potential to, change so much for the better, whether it's our medical industry, whether it's, the way we do research, analytics. I see so much potential. I see potential even empowering our teachers. So I'm not a person that will tell our teachers, oh, you got to have all these guardrails for AI. Let's have some, understand what it is. Let's help our students understand what it is. Lean in on it. Don't be afraid of it. Lean in on it. What I'm more worried about is what is it happening in terms of the employment sector? Because I think there's things that are happening, and it's happening as in real time right now. And trust me, I worry for our college students. I do. I worry because I'm for those who just graduated, right? I think, I've seen data from the Federal Reserve. We have 22 states that right now are in a recession. We're seeing our college students have a harder time right now to find, these jobs than we have seen recently. Will they get through it? Absolutely, right? That's what's great about having a college education. But I think right now is a time for us to really be looking at all of it. And so again, that's a plea that I have for my higher ed colleagues. It's because the information is there. Somebody has it. Maybe you don't have it, Jim, but somebody has it.
It's right here.
You guys have access to it. Because I do think it's important for us so that again, for advising, right? Making sure that we say hey, here's an opportunity. Because we know new industries, new jobs are going to be created because of it. But I wish I could have that information more now.
So, Commissioner, any final words?
Just this, everybody. Please, what I want you to leave with is, as much as there's challenges, and I've been very frank with you, but look, this is the way I am with everybody. Like literally, like this is what you're seeing here. Is like you could be a room full of superintendents, a room full of school committee members, different leaders, business leaders. The message would be very similar. I am so optimistic though, because again, because I get to visit schools, because I get to be in districts, I get to be in the field. And those of you who have been in the field or are in the field now, like you know this, like again, like the talent levels is there, you know, and I see the desire from our teachers. I see the desire from our school leaders. So I have nothing but optimism that that we'll easily overcome these challenges. If anything, what I see is fascinating opportunities. Fascinating opportunities for you in the room. You might want to be part of it. You know, so you know, frankly, like the great research that can come out of it. But I want to leverage every resource we have in this company. Because everybody, you know, resources are here. I mean, we're standing. I mean, my goodness. I mean, like the resources are here. So that's all I want is I want to leverage our resources because I know that if we leverage our resources, we're going to get there even faster. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you. We'll be back in, I don't know, maybe February, maybe January. I don't know. February. We're saying February. Okay. But look forward to seeing you in the spring.
Thank you.
Thank you.